This morning we're continuing our sermon series entitled Out of the Ashes, based on the book of Nehemiah. And one of the reasons we're going through this series is to gain insight into how to effectively lead good works that will bless others and bring glory to God. And this morning we turn our attention back to a guy that we met a couple of weeks ago by the name of Sanballet. As governor of Samaria, Sanballet was quite irritated by Nehemiah's initiative to help the people of Jerusalem rebuild their protective walls. So much so that he attempted to bring an end to this work by ridiculing the people, but even going so far as to threatening physical harm to those who were working on that wall. Now, initially, this brought some fear and discouragement, but Nehemiah rallied those individuals with these words, Nehemiah chapter 4 and verse 14. After I'd looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and fight for your families, your sons and your daughters, your wives and your homes. I love that speech. That's a great speech, right? If that doesn't get your heart racing, I'm not sure what will. Remember God, He's awesome. Now get out there and fight for your family. Fight for your homes. Do what you need to do. That should inspire some people. I mean, that makes me want to build a wall right now. I don't know about the rest of you, but it is a great speech. And initially, it got to Sanballet. He backed off for a second with his threats, but he is not one to give up easily. See, here's the thing you need to know about Sanballet. He's one of those try, and try again type of people. Do you know any people like that? Some of you are that type of person. In fact, it is the only reason some of you are married to the person that you're married to. You tried again to get them to say yes to go on a date with you. And then you tried again to get them to agree to that first kiss. And then you tried again for them to say, yes, I will marry you. And they finally did. And it's a wonderful quality in so many ways, right? It's blessed your wife. It can be enduring. But on the flip side, it can be exhausting. And I'm sure Nehemiah was exhausted, because he was the focus of Sanballet's renewed effort to put an end to this work. You see, this time, Sanballet decided, I'm not going to go after those who are working on the wall. I'm going to go right after the leader. And while Sanballet was the face of this attack against Nehemiah, make no mistake, it was Satan who was driving this ploy. You see, Satan's not all-knowing, but Satan's stinking smart. And he knows this, one of the best ways, if not the best way, to put an end to a good work that will bless others and bring glory to God is to take out the leader. Now listen, if you're a Christ-centered leader, and all of you are a leader in some way, if you're a Christ-centered leader in your home, in your workplace, at your school, in the church, make no mistake this morning, Satan's relentlessly going to go after you. You need to be aware of that truth, but you don't need to be intimidated by it. After all, having already been defeated, Satan poses no real threat to us. Now, Paul makes this plain in his letter to the church at Colossae, in Colossians chapter 2 and verse 15. He says, "And having disarmed the powers and authorities, he made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them by the cross." If you only remember one line from this entire sermon this morning, please take hold of this. Satan holds no power over you unless you give it to him. Now, how do you give it to him? You fall for one of his schemes. And his schemes, or some of those schemes, are on full display in this attempt of his, of Sanballet's, to take out a godly leader by the name of Nehemiah. Sanballet begins his assault on Nehemiah by offering what appears to be a peace offering. We read in Nehemiah chapter 6 and verse 2, Sanballet and Geshem sent me this message. Come, let us meet together in one of the villages on the plain of Ono. At this point, the rebuilding of the wall, just about everything's been completed, except they still need to put in the doors and they still need to put in the gates. And so Sanballet makes the decision to offer this invitation to Nehemiah. Why don't we get together for a sit-down, face-to-face meeting halfway between Jerusalem and Samaria? And on the surface, it appears that perhaps Sanballet's wanting to play nice. Maybe he's ready to offer some kind of truce, or maybe he's ready to get on board and say, I'm going to support you in this ongoing effort to be a blessing to the people of Jerusalem. And it's one of those offers that in many ways, that if you're just kind of a person observing this, you might consult Nehemiah and say, hey, this is a great opportunity. You need to take this meeting. Don't pass it up. Let's get together and unify. But Nehemiah says, no, I'm not interested. I'm going to take that meeting. In fact, we read these words in Nehemiah chapter 6, verse 2. Here's the reason why he's not going to do this. But they were scheming to harm me. Despite the appearances, Nehemiah understands Sanballet's still up to no good in the neighborhood. Like this guy, he can see right through these guys. Despite what it appears to be, they want to do him harm. Perhaps they want to beat him. Perhaps they want to kidnap him. Perhaps they even want to kill him. Leaders, there will be times when you encounter people who will give the appearance of wanting to be your ally, but their true intent will be to do you harm. Now, the good news is they probably won't beat you. The bad news is they will do everything within their power to undermine your efforts. Now, I want to make sure we don't get confused here. There are going to be people who come along and want to give you fresh ideas and challenge you to change some things and think about some things in some other ways. That doesn't mean they're your opposition or your enemy. It's good to have people who get you to think outside of the box and in new ways. But you do need to be wise to those people, whether they're in your family or at school or the workplace or church, who will pretend to be on your side simply to get into a position to be able to push their own agenda. And if you're not a discerning leader, you're in for a bumpy ride. I'll give you a personal illustration. When I was 34 years old, I took a job as a vice president for church relations at Oklahoma Christian University. And one of my responsibilities was to organize the yearly Bible lectureship or conference, if you will. One of the first initiatives the president said to me is, I want you, Sean, as you think about organizing that, to expand it. I want there to be a greater diversity of people who are involved in that and way of thinking that covers more of the larger gamut of the churches of Christ. And I said, great, that's exactly what I'd want to do. And so I put together a program. One day I'm sitting in my office and I get a call from a preacher in Texas. And he says, we've just received your lectureship program, and I'm wondering if you would meet with a group of ministers in Lawton, Oklahoma, just so we can talk to you about the program and learn more about it. And I said, fantastic, that'd be great. I said, how many people do you anticipate will be there? And he said, there'll be about 12 of us. I said, super. I said, let's set up the time, I'll come down. Somehow the chair of the Bible department caught wind of this meeting, and so he called me and he said, Sean, he said, you're being set up. He said, don't go. I said, well, I already told him I'll go. And he said, okay, if you're going to go, I'm going to go with you. And I said, great, let's go together. And so we drove down, and sure enough, I walked into a church, and there were not 12 people there were 150 people there, and there were video cameras, and there were hidden tape recorders. And for the next 2.5 hours, they asked questions, and then after that, they did a write-up in a paper as how I was trying to lead the university in a very wrong, unbiblical direction. I did not have the discernment at that time to know what I was stepping into. Thankfully, somebody did. So how do you develop discernment? How do you become a discerning leader? Well, first and foremost is prayer. Throughout this entire story of Nehemiah, we're reminded that this individual, Nehemiah, spent a lot of time talking to God about different issues and different decisions. He was just a man of deep, deep prayer. And although it's not specifically stated in this text, I have no doubt that he spent time talking to God about whether or not he should take this particular meeting. Leaders, it is absolutely vital that you spend time talking to God and listening to God. It was Nehemiah's humility to allow God to lead him that made him a discerning leader. And to a large degree, your success and your longevity as a leader comes down to your commitment to spending time talking to God, listening to God, and being led by God. You see, it is He that has the wisdom to open your eyes to see things in people that you do not see or do not want to see that can keep you out of a difficult situation. Now, the second key to being a discerning leader is to develop high emotional intelligence. It's evident from the way that Nehemiah handled so many different situations, from the way he developed or went about that initial conversation with the king of Persia, to his ability to rally those workers who were fearful and discouraged, that his emotional intelligence was off the charts. He just understood people. He understood what made them tick. And I have no doubt it was his ability to read people that kept him from falling for this particular setup. Now, a high IQ, that's going to help you a lot in the classroom, okay? That's great. But it is a high EQ that's going to keep you from being hijacked in the boardroom, in the conference room, in the living room. And so, leaders, if you want to lead for the long haul, be a student of people, including yourself. Understand what makes them tick, how they function, how you function as an individual. The more you understand about people, the more you understand about yourself, the greater your ability to be a non-anxious leader. And that is so incredibly important. When everybody else is in chaos, you need to be calm, patient, reasoned, non-anxious. Understand people. The last key I want to mention to you to being a discerning leader is this: keep your ear to the ground. Keep your ear to the ground. Many people reason that the reason Nehemiah didn't fall for this setup is because he had some type of insider that tipped him off to Sanballet's nefarious plan. Is that true? I don't know. I don't know for sure if that's true or not. What I do know is true is this: most people have a very difficult time keeping their motives completely hidden. Eventually, it kind of comes out. If you learn to listen well, you'll learn a lot about people from what they say or what other people say about them, and it'll help you be able to determine whether or not you can trust those individuals or not, whether they're really for your good or they're really just trying to get an inside track to do you harm or undermine your leadership. Now, from every indication, even if the meeting with Sanballet was on the up and up, Nehemiah would have turned down the meeting. You say, why is that the case? Well, to travel all the way to Ono, the plains of Ono, have a meaningful conversation, travel all the way back to Jerusalem, that would have taken about a half a week. Now, this was not the type of sacrifice that Nehemiah was willing to make. There was still much too important work to get done on that wall. And so he wasn't about to do that. He says in verse 3, "So I sent messengers to them with this reply: I'm carrying on a great project and cannot go down. Why should the work stop while I leave it and go down to you?" This is one of the most difficult decisions that leaders have to make. As a leader, oftentimes you have to say no to what is good so that you can say yes to what is best. Keep that in mind. Early in his formal ministry, Jesus was himself confronted with one of those decisions, right? There were so many opportunities to heal people, so many opportunities to drive demons out of people. But here's what Jesus understood: I can't give my time to that type of work because I've been sent to do far more important work. And so we hear Jesus speak these words in Mark chapter 1 and verse 35 through 38. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. Simon and his companions went to look for him, and when they found him, they exclaimed, "Everyone is looking for you." And Jesus replied, "Let us go somewhere else, to the nearby villages." "Why, Jesus?" "Here's why. So I can preach there also. That's why I've come." Satan loves to distract leaders from what is best with what's good. And if you're not crystal clear about your primary mission, and if you don't keep that as the focal point, you'll end up falling for this scheme. Now, I know I use this example way too much, so forgive me, but I think it's so important to keep in front of parents. Parents, your primary mission is the spiritual development of your kids. That's your primary mission. And yet, so often, what takes precedent in our schedules is social, academic, athletic type of activities for their development. Is there anything wrong with those activities? Not at all. But if you do not manage them well, it will come at the expense of their spiritual development. Now listen, Satan could care less if you raise the next Bill Gates or LeBron James. Doesn't care. What he doesn't want is for you to raise the next Nehemiah or Paul or Mary Magdalene. That's the last thing he wants. And so he will create all kinds of great opportunities for your kids to keep you from focusing on what's most important to their spiritual development. Now let's apply this to this church. There are a lot of good things that we can be involved in as a church. So many great opportunities. But here's the filter that we're going to use. Will these things help us make disciples who make disciples of all nations? That's our filter. Now, if those activities are not going to move us in that direction in some way, then we probably don't need to get invested in those things because we have a mission to be about. It's the mission that Jesus Christ gave us. And so that's how we're going to use that. Nehemiah, he turns down this decision to meet with Sanballet, but Sanballet, as I said, is not one to give up. And so Sanballet tries, and he tries, and he tries, and he tries. He tries again. In fact, Nehemiah says this in verse 4 through 6. 4 times they sent me the same message. And each time I gave them the same answer. And then the 5th time, Sanballet sent his aide to me with the same message. And in his hand was an unsealed letter in which was written, "It is reported among the nations," and Geshem says it is true, "that you and the Jews are plotting to revolt. And therefore you are building the wall. Moreover, according to these reports, you are about to become their king and have even appointed prophets to make this proclamation about you in Jerusalem. There is a king in Judah. Now this report will get to the king, so come, let us meet together." Sanballet sent an open letter rather than a sealed letter, which meant the public was privy to the contents of this letter. In other words, what it's similar to is one of those campaign ads you see on TV that attempts to slander the character of the opposition, right? That's what's going on. And so this open letter, basically Sanballet is saying to everybody who reads it, who hears about it, hey, Nehemiah's motives are not as pure as they might seem. He's not just come to build a wall, he's come to start a revolt. He's not come out of just well-being intentions, he's come to be a new king. That's his true intention. Leaders, please keep this in mind. There are going to be people that you encounter. And I don't care what position you hold, whether it's president of the Homeowners Association or an elder or the president or CEO of a company, there are going to be people who do their best to slander your character. They'll tell half-truths or outright lies to discredit you. Now, it's happened to me. It's probably happened to many of you. It's not fun. It hurts. But it shouldn't come as a surprise. It's just one of those schemes that takes place. And then Sanballet turns to the old "it's been reported" line to validate those slanderous accusations. And who exactly reported these claims? Well, Sanballet and Geshem. And that's about it. But by using that little line, it gives the impression that there are people all over the surrounding nations who are making these accusations about Nehemiah, and they're right on it. And it's just not true. And leaders, this is another tactic that you need to be aware of because Satan loves to use it. There will be people who oppose you, who try to get you to follow their agenda by saying things like this. There are a lot of people who think, and there are a lot of people who believe, and there are all kinds of people who feel. And when you get right down to it, sometimes that's true, but more often than not, it's really the person speaking those words and their three closest buddies. And that's about it. And so don't fall for it. And how do you keep from falling to such a tactic? Let me tell you what anxious leaders do. Anxious leaders immediately drop everything. They try to defend their reputation, or they try to make changes to keep the naysayers happy. Is that the way that Nehemiah responded? Not at all. His response is much more measured. You should have listened to his response in verse 8 and 9. I sent him this reply. Nothing like what you are saying is happening. You're just making it up out of your own head. They're all trying to frighten us, thinking their hands will get too weak for the work and it will not be completed. But I prayed, now strengthen my hands. Write this down. Discerning leaders state the truth, and then they turn to God for his strength to continue to work. You state the truth, then you lean on God to give you the strength to continue the work. It was another swing and miss for Sanballet. He wasn't done yet, though. This time he decides to hire off a prophet by the name of Shemiah. And in verse 10, we learn that Shemiah goes to Nehemiah and says, listen, what you need to do, because you have all this opposition against you, is you need to take refuge in the temple just to avoid those who want to kill you. Now that sounds like a good plan, right? But Nehemiah won't do it. And why won't he do it? Well, listen to what he says in verse 13. It says, he had been hired to intimidate me so that I would commit a sin by doing this, and then they would give me a bad name to discredit me. Fleeing to the temple would not only be a cowardly act on Nehemiah's part, which was not in his character, but he also knew it would be a clear violation of the law of Moses. The only people who are allowed to go in that temple in that particular way and area were the priests, according to Numbers chapter 18 and verse 7. And so here's Nehemiah, and what he's saying is, even if my life is at risk, even if it's going to cost me my very life, I will not sin against God. I just won't do it. Leaders, one of Satan's very favorite tactics to take down a leader is to get them to compromise morally. Very few things will take down a leader as quickly as that type of compromise. Now, this isn't exactly fair to leaders, in my opinion. So I just want to offer a quick reminder. Leaders are in need of grace as much as anyone. Because a leader struggles at times just like anyone does. But having said that, please realize if you are a leader, fair or not, compromise comes at great expense. Now, let's be honest, it is not always easy to say no when there seems to be a justification to say yes. Nehemiah could have easily tried to justify a decision to take refuge in the temple. My life's at stake. So it's hard to say no. So how do you keep from falling for this type of scheme? I want you to listen to Nehemiah and how he kept from compromising. Verse 12. I realized that God had not sent him, but they had prophesied against me because Tobiah and Sanballet had hired him. Here's how he did it. He was so in tune with God that he recognized that Sanballet's effort to help really was disingenuous. And he knew that the moment that he suggested that go ahead and violate the will of God. Here's the point. What will keep you from falling for that scheme is that if you're so in tune with God, you're able to recognize His will above all others. I mean, you just tune into God so that it's His voice that you hear above all of the other voices that are clamoring to get your attention. Sanballet, he was relentless. This guy tried and he tried and he tried again. He just kept trying, it seemed like. But Nehemiah refused to give an inch. He just wouldn't give in. And as a result, one of the most amazing feats in all of history was accomplished. I mean, we get used to the story, but I really let it sink in. Verse 15, so the wall was completed on the 25th of Elul in 52 days. Some of you have little garden projects or home repairs that have gone on for longer than 52 days, right? They built an entire protective wall in that time. Listen, being a leader is one of the most trying experiences that you can take on because Satan is relentless in his attack on trying to take down leaders. However, if you'll lead with discernment, with focus, and tenacity, and faith, you'll be part of good works that bless others and bring glory to God in ways that you never imagined. Leaders, thank you for what you do. Again, whether you're a leader in the home or a leader at your company, whether you're a leader at school or a leader in this church, you're all leaders to some capacity. Keep doing what you're doing for the glory of God.